Hey guys, Akio Murasaki here. In this video, I kind of want to talk about the upcoming game Pokemon Legends ZA. I mean upcoming, but it's releasing just tomorrow, October the 16th, 2025. However, instead of talking about the Pokemon game itself, I kind of want to focus in this video a little bit on the technical side of things, the gameplay as well, and the various issues the game has been having, that's been, covered and documented and also discussed by lots of different people on Twitter and also elsewhere on social media. And also the fact that despite the game receiving very positive reviews so far, cruising around 80%, 79, 80 something, 86%, it's not without issues, and unfortunately it's hitting right now this weird transition period between Nintendo Switch 1 and Nintendo Switch 2, and even though I feel like the game should have really released mostly for Nintendo Switch 2 and make use of the upgraded hardware of the new console, they still decided to release it on Switch 1. And it is having quite a lot of different issues. I'm not quite sure about the performance issues. That's probably something that people might have mentioned. I haven't seen anyone specifically mentioning it. However, what people did mention explicitly is the various graphics issues and the various shortcuts and a kind of reductions that Nintendo and more specifically Game Freak had to make in order to accommodate still the old hardware of Nintendo Switch 1. So as you can see here, we have a comparison between a full Nintendo Switch 1 docked and handheld, and also comparing Nintendo Switch 1 and 2. And to me personally, this feels like one of these PlayStation graphics moments where you kind of look at the graphics and like, what is exactly the difference here, right? So for instance, when you look at Nintendo Switch 1 and 2 docked, yes, you do see quite a lot of differences. For instance, the resolution, the overall resolution on Nintendo Switch 2 here, 2100p roughly, and also FPS, 60 FPS, not 30 FPS, not locked 30 FPS like on Switch 1. You of course see way better quality on Nintendo Switch 2. You look at the tree, you look at the resolution, for instance, of the model here, of the female model in the brownish coat. Higher resolution. However, other than that, I don't see major differences. Oh, maybe the shadow of the building here is actually missing. Is ironically missing on Switch 2, is present on Switch 1. Oh, that might actually be like a bit of a, like, it's not the same, not exactly the same screenshot taken here. The angles are also a little different when you look at the different images. But in general, if you look at Switch 1 and Switch 2, is there a difference? Because I really can't tell what it is. There is one when you look at the handheld Switch 1 and Switch 2, that's image 3 and 4. There are some differences. You can clearly see the resolution. But other than that, again, what are the differences? I can't really say. There are quite some more screenshots here, for instance, when they compare Switch 1 and Switch 2 again. Here, a slightly more dynamic scene with the Pokemon and the trainers being shown. I can't tell the difference. I genuinely cannot tell the difference other than just like very, very minute details. Otherwise, really no difference whatsoever. And it's a problem. Because supposedly, the game was supposed to look way better on Switch 2, or at least there was some hope that it could have used the better hardware of Switch 2 to really, pull up the details and really showcase that, that Pokemon as a genre, as a franchise, is actually improving. But unfortunately, that's not the case. What it did prove is the suspicions of people and the general, skill issue that has been going on with the Pokemon franchise in the last couple of games. So there's a lot of games released on the Switch, already compatible with Switch 2, but also more on the Switch 1. You, for instance, have Zelda Breath of the Wild. I think it was 2017 or 2019. Probably 2017. So it's been a while back. And these games really showcase how much you can do with the Switch 1 hardware. And then you see the Pokemon games, and they look nothing alike, despite, subjectively the worlds being as big, the amount of details on screen being as much. But somehow the Zelda game, which is older than newer Pokemon games, just looks way better. And then you have the subsequent Zelda games that kind of improve on the formula and look a little better, but still run very smoothly on the Switch. And then you see the Pokemon games. And not only do the Pokemon games not run smoothly on Switch 1, but also just don't look very good. They have problems with details, there are way less details in the Pokemon games. The shading is very often not there. The texture details are quite horrible. They look flat. And then you're wondering, should I really continue buying these Switch games? A lot of people want to, but would I really? Probably not, right? I wouldn't buy into the newer Pokemon games here. And what is very interesting here when you look at this comparison again, that the higher resolution on Switch 2, but otherwise not really much of a difference. And what this kind of user points out here on Twitter, Kevlar2, did you notice how flat the textures are? Yes, all of this is drawn. This is like a single texture with, from what I can tell, barely any bump mapping. There is, almost no bump mapping whatsoever. It's just a flat texture. For Switch 2, this looks horrible. I thought this is, higher quality, better hardware, and this doesn't look good at all. And then people started looking a little bit about the Pokemon as well, about the newer evolutions. Sorry, at the gameplay. Pokemon comes later. But I wanna move on first to the gameplay, which it just looks very, very clunky. I'm just gonna play you guys this video here. Oh, sorry, very loud. It's just it is just very all over the place. Let me just play it once again with the volume off. Here we have the player running, we have the Pokemon running. Theoretically, the mega form of this green Pokemon here, Zygarde, is attacking your Pokemon, but it's kind of been first targeting the player somehow. And it's just everything's moving all over the place. You might think I'm complaining, but for instance, when you look at this gameplay here, I'm going to turn up the volume. The sound doesn't really matter here. Let's focus on the movements. You have the Mega Starmie basically just running all over the place. And in one other clip, not the clip here, but in one other clip, the Starmie basically targets the player, targets the trainer instead of the Pokemon, and the trainer has to dodge. And in general, what is happening here? What are we even doing here? The thing about Pokemon games is that when you look at some of the older Pokemon games, for instance, there was a very strong transition between the kind of the overworld, the world overview where you were roaming and going into grass and getting into Pokemon battles. And then you had the battle system itself, which was kind of a separate instance, separate stage from the main game. And if you kept this, and if you kind of kept the Pokemon part, the Pokemon battle part, entirely separate from the roaming part, that would have been simply way easier. And that would have been still doable. You can still have I'm just gonna go back to one of the previous screenshots here because it's very showing. If you kept kind of the game overview, the main world overview separate, and then this separate from the Pokemon battles being into kind of a separate stage altogether, loaded and handled separately, that would have also partially addressed some of the performance issues, because you would simply have not everything loaded at exactly the same time. And also, speaking of loading, apparently there's only one map, there's only one city in the entire game. And the whole city is a single model. It's loaded at once. So that's quite a lot of the things that the console has to handle. And I guess that's one of the reasons why they had to cut down on quite a lot of features which were kind of like, very loaded visually. Like, for instance, here, this is not like an early version of the game, no. In the previous versions of the game, you had normal balconies, you had a lot of 3D details, but they had to cut this down because supposedly the Switch simply couldn't handle this effortlessly, which I think is very, very interesting. I feel like they should have either focused on Switch 2 and, given up at that point on Switch 1. But I also do understand that this is much of a transition period and there are still a lot of units and a lot of players playing on Switch 1. So just cutting off this entire demographic of players might have been a bit of a financial disaster, I guess. But now finally moving to the Pokemon themselves, I found this very, very interesting because some of the Pokemon designs are just like, what is this? That's a Mega Pyroar. And then we have, which everyone is just making fun of this one right now. This is a Mega Meganium. So it's basically Meganium with, instead of having one set of petals, it has 4. Yeah, that's crazy creative, isn't it? And then we have this guy here. I have no idea what. Oh, sorry, this is a Clefable, which looks like it's a shiny Mega Clefable. Looks like it has a hat. And then we have a Walking Starmie, which is the Mega Starmie. I'm sorry, that's not very creative. And I get the feeling this hasn't been actually done, again, for performance reasons. They had to cut down on model complexity because they decided to draw the Pokemon models in the world view as well. So that adds to kind of like the rendering burden, on the console as well, on top of everything else being loaded and rendered. And I find it funny because, like, someone, for instance, brought this up. Like, this could have been the Mega Starmie. You could have had Mega Pokemon looking menacing, looking very, very creative. Nope, not happening. Not in this game. Not in your Pokemon Legends ZNA. Maybe sometime later when they only focus on Switch 2. But yeah, so far that is simply not happening. And then I thought to myself, okay, what is happening with the creativity behind Pokemon, right? Because I spent a lot of time playing the older games. I think I poured like well over 100 hours into both Gen 1 and Gen 2. And a bit into Gen 3. With the later Pokemon games, I had like more of an on and off experience kind of. But I focused mostly on Gen 1 to 3. And I kind of looked at some of the newer Pokemon designs, and in my very subjective impression, I just feel like everything starts blending together at some point. Like they simply become way too similar to either the previous designs or just to each other. Like this is, for instance, Gen 1. A lot of the designs are based on animals and or somehow inspired by mythological Japanese creatures. So you have like a bit of diversity. You for instance have the I forgot now, the Bulbasaur line, the Charmander line, later the Squirtle line, the complete separate. All of the other creatures based on animals but very, very separate. And you can see the diversity in them. And even the fact that they created the free legendary birds here, right? You have Articuno here, you have Zapdos, you have Moltres. There seems to be quite some diversity. And then moving on to Gen 2, I kind of like Gen 2 a lot because the Game Freak showed quite a lot of creativity in how they kind of took maybe elements of the previous generation, but in general made the new Pokemon weird, very, very weird and unique. And Gen 3, we're gonna go into Gen 3. Gen 3, I think here with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, you again have quite a lot of very weird Pokemon, but some of them again based, like, so going back a little bit to the first generation, based a little bit on animals. But then when you look at the lower row, it just gets incredibly weird. They start, like, at the very bottom here, they start looking more like Digimon rather than Pokemon. So it feels like the creativity is just kind of slowly beginning to fade, right? What do we have here? This is, now I'm trying to remember, I think it's Diamond, here it's Diamond and Pearl. I think that this is still Gen 3, because I do remember a lot of these Pokemon being in Gen 3. So here, okay, so it's still Gen 3, but you do notice that some of them are just kind of like blending together in a way, right? And then going into subsequent generations. And the thing is this, for each next generation, I guess that's kind of the mistake they also made a little bit. You are going to see Pokemon from the previous generations. So eventually when you see more and more Pokemon, eventually they just blend together into kind of like, this gray mass of everything. I used to, when I was younger, I used to joke and make fun of Digimon quite a lot because the evolutions were just so weird. Like you ended up with like a really hot girl or some kind of mecha at the very end, and also the names were pretty funny. But I have a feeling that now Pokemon is also going more into this direction of these Pokemon just being hella weird. Like X and Y, for instance, here also, I don't know, it's just like the designs just feel very, very strange, very, very messy at some point, right? With Sun and Moon here as well. They're kind of still looking a little bit like animals, but otherwise just being weird something creatures. I don't know. It is basically just my impression. You guys tell me how you personally feel about the different generations. What were your favorite generations? Please let me know in the comment section. I'm very, very curious, actually. At least, especially some of you who jumped a little bit later and maybe know the previous generations from the newer games. I'm very curious about your comments here. And also, let me know how you feel about the new Pokemon Legends ZA game. I am personally, as kind of like an older player, I'm not very impressed, honestly. I also see that the latest streak of Pokemon games on Nintendo, and the fact that they're simply not able to keep up somehow performance-wise and also graphics quality-wise with a lot of the other titles on the Switch. I'm just disappointed, I'm gonna be honest. But that's basically it for this video, and I see you guys in the next one. Mata ne!